Stormy night. Heavy rain beat against the mansion windows. The maid swept the hallway while the child scribbled a strange drawing on the floor. The master crossed the room in a hurry, tablet in hand without looking. The little one raised the paper and said, "Look, the monster!" The man's dry tone cut through the scene. The servants fell silent. The woman extended the notebook, asking for a second, and the bold child placed the drawing on the ebony table. The lights flickered, eyes fixed on the paper. Everything stopped there. An advisor dropped his pen, the secretary held her breath, and outside, a thunderclap tore through the air. No one moved. The man remained still with his hand on the paper. Do you like intense, chaotic stories full of emotional tension? Then subscribe now so you don't miss any story. Thank you for being here. Now back to our story. The tempest scourged the Thorn estate with a ferocious tropical wrath. Lightning tore the dark sky like electric scars, and the torrential rain lashed against the panoramic windows, transforming Houston's skyline into a gray and bluish blur, almost apocalyptic. Inside, at the heart of that empire of concrete, glass, and imported marble, Elias Thorn seemed as untouchable as the frigid walls that encompassed him. Yet the truth was that behind the facade of an unyielding magnate, owner of the formidable Ethel Group, he was merely an exhausted man, a castaway in his own ocean of labor, navigating through papers and charts that accumulated on the solid ebony desk in his private study. The light flickered, a caprice of the storm, casting dancing shadows that swallowed and revealed the expensive artworks adorning the walls, the designer furniture, and the vast library that covered an entire wall. Elias, a man whose life was a stringent schedule and decisions involving millions of US dollars, perceived neither the chaotic beauty of the night nor the solitude that permeated every corner of that colossal mansion. His deep brown eyes remained fixed on the screen of his state-of-the-art tablet, where numbers and company performance reports merged in a frantic dance of profits and losses. He was there, physically present, but his mind soared afar to future meetings, to market strategies, to a world where emotions were an unattainable luxury, an impediment to success. While the magnate drowned in his own corporate reality, Sophia Ramirez, the estate's governess, moved with the discretion of one who knew every corner and secret of the place. Her steps were light upon the Persian rug that graced the main corridor, her hands agile and efficient, dusting a bronze statuette worth more than years of her salary. Sophia was a strong woman, her features etched by life, yet with a dignified sparkle in her eyes that revealed an unwavering resilience. A single mother, she stretched herself thin to care for her daughter, Luna, her small ray of sunshine amidst life's difficulties. On that stormy night, as on many others, Luna accompanied her, for there was no one to leave her with at home. Luna Ramirez, at merely 6 years old, was a vibrant counterpoint to the environment's solemnity. Seated on the cold living room floor, upon a piece of brown paper Sophia had procured for her, the girl was engrossed in her own universe. Crayons, some worn, others nearly new, spread around her, creating a circle of vibrant colors amidst the gray and gold decor. Luna's vivid imagination was a sanctuary, a way to fill the mansion's grand silence and the absence of her mother, who worked tirelessly. She scribbled with the concentration of an artist, shapes and figures that made sense only in her childlike mind, but which to her were as real as the rain outside. The social contrast between Elias and the mother-daughter duo was palpable, almost poignant. He, at the apex of an empire built by sheer force and ambition, surrounded by luxury and power, yet empty within. They striving to survive with dignity, with the sweat of honest labor, finding joy in small things, like a handful of crayons and a piece of paper. Elias could purchase anything, yet seemed incapable of buying peace or connection. Sophia and Luna possessed little, but held an emotional richness that money could not even glimpse. It was a silent dance of worlds that touched but rarely truly met. Suddenly, a louder peal of thunder made the mansion tremble slightly, and the lights flickered with greater intensity. Elias, who had risen to stretch his legs and fetch a bitter coffee, passed through the living room. His eyes, still clouded with corporate preoccupation, momentarily landed on the floor where Luna sat. The girl, unfazed by the noise, held up the drawing she had just completed, an innocent smile gracing her face. It was a monster, and not just any monster. Luna, with her childlike acumen and her capacity to observe the world around her in a way adults had forgotten, had drawn something she seemed to have observed without fully comprehending. Luna's monster was not fashioned from sharp claws and teeth, but from strange geometric shapes interconnected by tortuous lines, with red and blue dots scattered like eyes or buttons. There was something uncannily specific in those details, a pattern that deviated from a child's common fantasy. It resembled a schematic, a misshapen gear, a distorted mechanism, yet drawn with the naive precision of one merely reproducing what she saw. Luna, her voice tiny but filled with pride, extended the drawing to him. "Look, Mr. Thorne, it's the monster I saw." Elias, with a distracted nod and a perfunctory smile that failed to reach his weary eyes, barely glanced at the paper. His mind had already retreated to spreadsheets and projections. "How lovely, Luna. Very creative." He uttered the words like an automaton, without truly absorbing the image, without allowing the purity of that moment to touch him. To him, it was merely a child's scribble, an unimportant fantasy, an insignificant distraction amidst his business concerns that consumed him day and night. Luna's monster was cast aside in his mind, like another item to be crossed off a to-do list, something without real value. He continued his path to the kitchen where Sophia had already prepared his coffee, completely ignoring the sparkle in the girl's eyes and the unusual complexity of what she had depicted. Elias's indifference, his inability to see beyond the surface of a simple drawing, planted right then, in that instant, the seed of a truth he had underestimated, a truth hidden where it was least expected, revealed by a child's innocence on a stormy night. The tempest, which had swept through Houston with an untamed fury, left in its wake not merely soaked thoroughfares and splintered branches, but also a nascent trail of unseen dilemmas destined to unfurl within the Ethel group, much like a receding tide unveiling hidden wrecks. In the days following that gale which had rattled the Thorne estate, a palpable apprehension settled within the glass-clad corridors of the Ethel Group Tower. Financial reports, once pristine, began to exhibit unsettling inconsistencies, akin to figures dancing out of sync. Pivotal projects, meant to stride forward with impunity, encountered inexplicable delays, ensnared by sudden bureaucratic impasses or systemic failures that seemed to materialize from an ethereal void. And, most critically, confidential intelligence, the very sinews of the company's competitive edge, appeared to seep towards rivals, like water through an imperceptible fissure. Elias Thorne, the magnate who had once orchestrated his empire with the frigid precision of a maestro, conducting a perfectly tuned symphony, now felt the crushing gravitas of disarray. His desk, once arranged with the meticulous exactitude of a surgeon's tray, now groaned under burgeoning stacks of urgent reports and alarming memoranda. Meetings protracted for hours, punctuated by fervent disputations and inconclusive diagnostics. He felt an immense burden, a precipitous mountain of responsibilities cascading upon his broad shoulders. With his accustomed tenacity, he endeavored to unearth the genesis of the calamities, yet the evidence remained nebulous and contradictory, akin to a jigsaw puzzle missing crucial pieces, while others stubbornly refused to interlock. Each nascent lead seemed to cul-de-sac, every internal inquiry dissolving into a labyrinthine tangle of disparate data. Elias's vexation mounted, congealing into a dense pall that began to occlude his once perspicacious judgment. Amidst this maelstrom, Arthur Thorne, Elias's brother, and one of the company's most influential directors, moved with the calculated discretion of a predator. With an ever-present smile and a mien that exuded unwavering loyalty, he presented himself as the quintessential confidant. He proffered palliative solutions, minor keys that unlocked smaller difficulties, yet failed to address the genesis of the malaise. Each assistance from Arthur was akin to a superficial dressing upon a profound wound, alleviating the immediate discomfort, while the insidious ailment within progressed unchecked. He subtly sowed seeds of doubt, with nuanced remarks and veiled suggestions concerning the competence of Elias's team, the fealty of certain employees, and the efficacy of the security protocols. "Perhaps it is time to reevaluate, brother. The market is so volatile, and our team, well, perhaps it requires a managerial jolt," he posited, his voice a velvet caress yet laden with insidious venom. Elias, enervated and exasperated, began to heed these insidious insinuations, failing to perceive that Arthur was the very architect of the treachery, who beneath the guise of aid intensified the sabotage. Tightening the bolts of the intricate snare he himself had meticulously constructed. While the Ethel Group tower seethed in corporate crisis, the Thorne estate maintained a largely unaltered cadence, an opulent oasis of apparent tranquility. Luna Ramirez, with her contagious vitality and insatiable curiosity, continued to frequent the residence alongside Sophia. For the 6-year-old girl, the mansion was a universe of boundless discovery, a grand stage where the lives of adults unfolded in enigmatic rituals. Her discerning eyes apprehended nuances that eluded her preoccupied elders. She observed the procession of luxury vehicles in the garage, the staff ascending and descending staircases laden with important documents, the peculiar demeanor of Arthur, always with a smile that failed to reach his eyes, markedly different from Elias's taut countenance. Within her small sketchbook, Luna meticulously refined her monster. The formerly simple lines now bore more definitive contours, infused with dark, menacing hues. She appended shapes that, to an unadulterated childlike mind, signified something sinister. Sharpened talons on the creature's tendrils, glistening red eyes that seemed to peer from the shadows, and an intricate structure reminiscent of gears and tangled wires, much like the technical schematics she occasionally glimpsed on the mansion's tables. For her, the monster was not merely a figment of imagination, but a vivid embodiment of a sensation, a nascent intuition that something was amiss, that an invisible peril lurked within the grand edifice. She sketched with an impressive gravity, each stroke imbued with a perception that adults, their minds dulled by logic and quotidian routine, could never fully decipher. One day, as Sophia Ramirez completed her task of organizing Elias's private library, Luna, sketchbook in hand, hurried to her mother. "Look, Mama, the monster is stronger now," she exclaimed, her eyes gleaming with a child's unadulterated pride. Sophia, ever attuned to her daughter's boundless creativity, took the drawing and regarded it with tender affection. "How beautiful, my blossom. You are truly a gifted artist," she lauded, her maternal heart swelling with warmth. Observing Elias stride briskly down the corridor, his countenance clouded with vexation, she mused that a touch of art and innocence might alleviate her employer's profound tension. "Mr. Elias," Sophia called, her voice gentle yet resolute. Elias paused, visibly impatient, a cell phone pressed to his ear, his gaze distant, fixated on some unseen quandary. "Yes, Sophia. Do you require anything?" His voice was arid, weighted by the weariness of recent days. Sophia, disregarding the magnate's haste, extended Luna's sketchbook. "Luna has created a new drawing of her monster. It is quite imaginative, don't you agree?" Luna, positioned beside her mother, proudly displayed the drawing with a gap-toothed smile, yearning for affirmation. Elias, with an almost imperceptible sigh, accepted the sketchbook. His eyes traversed the image swiftly, failing to genuinely absorb the intricate details Luna had painstakingly augmented. His mind dwelled elsewhere, consumed by the discordant figures and inexplicable delays plaguing the Ethel Group. "Ah, yes, very lovely, Luna," he mumbled, returning the sketchbook with a perfunctory nod. "Continue drawing. You possess considerable talent." His voice was monochromatic, a commendation of mere formality, devoid of genuine engagement. He entirely overlooked the intricate tangle of wires and gears Luna had rendered, the innocent child's representation of something he, in his adult logic, frantically sought within reports and computer codes. Sophia felt a faint flicker of disappointment, yet permitted none to surface. She offered her gratitude to Elias and led Luna away to resume her play. Elias, for his part, recommenced his frenetic pace, his mind already returned to the corporate maelstrom that devoured his attention. Luna's drawing, with its subtle prefiguration of the imminent threat, remained an unheeded clue, a pivotal piece of a complex puzzle he was yet unable to assemble, too profoundly immersed in the dense fog of sabotage that Arthur so adroitly wove around him. The peril burgeoned, silent and imperceptible to adult eyes, yet vividly delineated in the vibrant hues of a child's nascent fear. The ominous quietude of the threat, once confined to the simplistic lines of a child's drawing, shattered with the deafening cacophony of a corporate disaster that would convulse the very foundations of the Ethel Group. It was as if the storm outside, with its thunder and lightning, had merely been a prelude to the maelstrom now brewing within the heart of Elias Thorne's empire. A pivotal project, the veritable jewel in the company's crown, which promised to revolutionize the renewable energy sector and represented an investment of millions, had been spectacularly sabotaged. This was no mere error. It was a meticulously orchestrated series of failures, executed with surgical precision, which exposed the company to public ignominy and a financial hemorrhage that sent Ethel Group shares plummeting on the stock exchange like stones from a cliff. The headlines in esteemed financial publications like the Wall Street Journal screamed about the crisis. Elias's reputation, once unassailable, was now questioned in every precinct. The market baron, celebrated for his acute sagacity and iron grip, appeared to have utterly lost his bearings. Within the Thorne estate, the air grew heavy, imbued with an almost palpable tension. Elias, a man of inherently few words, descended into an abyss of reclusion and profound frustration. He spent his nights in his private study, submerged in a deluge of reports and intricate charts, his brow furrowed with consuming worry, his weary eyes reflecting the fierce internal battle he waged. The mansion's grandeur, once an unequivocal symbol of his formidable power, now seemed a cold, solitary labyrinth, echoing his own profound anguish. Sophia, observing him on the rare occasions he emerged from his office, discerned a disturbing pallor on his face, an absence of the accustomed luster in his gaze. She perceived the profound sorrow emanating from him, an aura of desperation that touched her deeply, even as the immutable social chasm between them remained. Arthur Thorne, conversely, seemed to thrive amidst the unfolding pandemonium. With a calculating smile and the comportment of one who had utterly mastered the situation, he presented himself as the sole individual capable of extricating the Ethel Group from its precipitous decline. In meetings with the board and senior executives, he put forth drastic and unequivocally unpopular measures, summarily slashing essential budgets and dismissing long-serving employees, all in the purported name of a necessary restructuring. His pronouncements were poison disguised as a bitter panacea, and he distilled them with malevolent mastery, systematically undermining confidence in Elias, sowing insidious seeds of distrust amongst the executive ranks, and progressively isolating his brother. Arthur meticulously wove a labyrinthine web of intrigues through the gleaming corridors of the Ethel Group tower, subtly swaying some, promising judicious advantages to others, thereby cultivating an environment where loyalty to Elias dissipated like desert sand through clenched fingers. He strategically positioned himself as the company's impending messiah, the singular figure possessing the requisite vision and courage to reverse the prevailing downturn, while Elias sank deeper into his own quagmire of self-reproach and the lurid tapestry of suspicion that Arthur had so adroitly constructed. Luna, her child's eyes perceiving far beyond what adults permitted themselves to discern, registered the profound shift. Her mother, Sophia's customary cheerfulness was more subdued. Supplanted by a silent apprehension, she endeavored to mask with forced smiles. And Uncle Elias, who had previously been merely the formidable, distant man, now appeared steeped in sorrow, a dark cloud perpetually hovering over him. The little girl sensed the palpable pressure, the pervasive anguish that permeated the mansion's very air, and the adult's despondency touched her in a manner she found impossible to articulate. One rain-swept afternoon, as Sophia meticulously cleaned the vast living room and Elias remained reclusive in his study, Luna settled onto the kitchen floor, her crayons and a pristine sketchpad before her. The unsettling image of the monster she had witnessed during the storm, the one that had so profoundly startled her, returned to her mind with a disquieting clarity. She commenced drawing once more, with an intensity that compelled her to bite the tip of her tongue. This time, the monster manifested with even greater detail. Its sharpened talons, its malevolent red eyes, and most crucially, arrows and symbols that, to Luna's nascent understanding, denoted the precise direction of the encroaching threat. She depicted the monster emerging from a cubicle bearing an imaginary nameplate and numerous dotted lines leading directly to the image of a towering edifice, which to her represented the Ethel group. There was also a diminutive, sorrowful figure, whom she intuitively associated with Uncle Elias, with the monstrous entity looming ominously over him. With the drawing completed, Luna scurried to her mother, her tiny chest pounding with an urgency barely contained within her voice. "Mommy, Mommy, look! I drew the monster again, and he's in Uncle Arthur's office. He's the one making Uncle Elias sad and causing trouble for the company, Mummy. I saw him," she exclaimed, frenetically pointing at the drawing, and towards the path that to her was unequivocally obvious. Sophia, who had been momentarily diverted, meticulously dusting an antique vase, turned with a tender yet weary smile. She knelt, gathered her daughter into her arms and kissed her forehead. "Oh, my love, what a beautiful drawing. But Mommy already told you. You mustn't invent stories about monsters, okay? Uncle Arthur is a good man. He wouldn't do anything bad. This is just from your head, your childish imagination, my angel," Sophia uttered, her voice soft yet firm, attempting to soothe her daughter and, simultaneously, to dissuade her from any fanciful notions she might harbor. She embraced Luna with profound affection, stroking her hair, though oblivious to the profound gravity of those words, which to her represented merely a child's innocent reverie, but which were, in truth, the definitive key to unraveling a far greater mystery. The stark, unadorned truth had been articulated aloud, yet it was promptly misconstrued as an innocuous fantasy, a mere childlike delusion. Luna's anguish intensified, the crushing sensation that the solution lay within grasp, yet remained imperceptible to adult eyes, proving an unbearable burden for such a diminutive heart. The siege, once a subtle intuition, now tightened with the force of a noose around Elias Thorne's neck. With each passing minute, the Ethel group, his empire forged with sweat and sacrifice, seemed to slip through his fingers. Pulled by an invisible current, the sensation of powerlessness was a slow-acting poison, corroding his confidence, his authority, his very identity. An emergency meeting had been convened at the Ethel Group Tower, an event that promised to be a stage for the reaffirmation of his power, but which quickly devolved into a public disaster, a humiliation orchestrated with diabolical mastery. Arthur Thorne, his brother, the very visage of betrayal, moved with predatory coldness, his icy gaze sweeping the conference room like an unforgiving judge. The words he uttered were cloaked in impeccable logic, arguments forged in the foundry of ambition, which seemed to resonate with the shareholders, blinded by the promise of stability and profits amidst the manufactured crisis. Elias watched, stunned, as Arthur, with an almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips, orchestrated a vote that would drastically curtail his older brother's powers, transforming him into a mere figurehead, a king without a crown, a general without an army. With each uttered yes, with each hand raised in acquiescence, a blade was plunged into his back, and the crushing weight of defeat pressed upon his chest. The Ethel group, once the very reflection of his soul, was being slowly dismantled by the one who should have been his staunchest ally. Humiliated, his pride in tatters, Elias departed the meeting under Arthur's complacent gaze, his brother not even bothering to conceal his satisfaction. Outside, a torrential rain lashed down upon Houston, a deluge that seemed to echo the tempest raging within Elias. The somber sky mirrored his own soul, heavy and clouded. The journey back to the Thorne estate was a blur of fogged windshields and distant sirens, each raindrop striking the car like a relentless reminder of his defeat. He longed to reach home, to seek refuge in the solitude of his thoughts, far from the inquisitive glances and malicious whispers that surely already spread through the corporate corridors. Upon entering the mansion, the silence was almost palpable, broken only by the muffled sound of the rain and the insistent drip of a distant gutter. The house felt immense, vacant, the absence of Sophia and Luna weighing like an unseen burden. He tossed his keys onto the coffee table, the metallic clatter reverberating through the vast room. Weary, disoriented, Elias paced aimlessly through the living room, his footsteps echoing on the polished marble. In a moment of despair and distraction, His foot snagged on something soft, forgotten on the living room floor. He glanced down, irritated, and saw one of Luna's drawings, a crumpled, colorful piece of paper that he had, in his haste and preoccupation, utterly overlooked before. This time, however, the image of the monster appeared different. Perhaps it was the room's encroaching gloom, perhaps the exhaustion that blurred his senses, but the drawing radiated an uncanny energy. Elias stooped, retrieving the paper from the floor, and his eyes swept over the childlike rendition with a newfound curiosity. Luna's monster was a disfigured figure, with tentacles spreading in all directions, like dark, menacing roots. There was a vibrant chaos in the colors, an innocent yet unsettling energy. But it was a minuscule, almost imperceptible detail that seized his attention, making his heart lurch. At the creature's center, amidst the childlike strokes and vibrant hues, Luna had drawn a small symbol. It was a circle with 3 diagonal lines bisecting it, a design Elias recognized immediately, an electric current surging through every fiber of his being. It was the logo of an internal cybersecurity system, a highly complex data protection program crucial to the Ethel Group. That very software had been mysteriously deactivated shortly before the last cyber attack that paralyzed the company's systems, causing incalculable losses and shareholder distrust. Precisely what Arthur had leveraged to undermine his authority. A shiver coursed through Elias. The innocence of the drawing, the way Luna had depicted the monster with tentacles spreading and infiltrating, suddenly aligned with terrifying precision to the patterns of the sabotage he had been enduring. The tentacles were not mere childish scribbles, they were the ramifications of an attack, the digital tendrils that infiltrated the company's systems, deactivating software, corrupting data, wreaking havoc. The symbol of the deactivated software was the proof, the criminal's signature, imprinted there by a child's hand. He then realized that Luna's monster was no mere fantasy, no creature born of childish nightmares, but a visual and intuitive representation of Arthur's insidious scheme. A child with the purity of her perception had seen what he, a seasoned and hardened magnate, had failed to perceive. The blindness that had afflicted him was more profound than he had imagined, obscured by trust and fraternal affection. This discovery was the first major turning point for Elias, an abrupt and painful awakening. The truth, once veiled by complex corporate analyses and security reports, now revealed itself through the eyes of a child, stark and brutally clear. His eyes were open to the undeniable possibility of intimate betrayal, a treachery that sprang from within, from his own blood, and which had been exposed by an infantile drawing. The realization finally dawned, and with it, a cold fury began to simmer within his chest, a wrath promising retribution commensurate with Arthur's perfidy. The fury that simmered within Elias Thorne's breast was not an uncontrolled conflagration, but a chilling heat, a forge shaping the sharpest determination he had ever felt. He could not erupt, not now. Arthur was a viper, and to ensnare him, Elias needed to be more astute, more patient, more invisible. The Thorne estate, previously a mere stage for his solitary routine, now transformed into his command center, a silent laboratory where each thought became strategy, each movement a calculated step. He became an observer, a detective of his own life, revisiting every peculiar incident at the Ethel Group, each minor system flaw, every sabotage rumor he had once dismissed as trifling imperial setbacks. The image of Luna Ramirez's monster hovered in his mind like a macabre beacon, illuminating the shadows of the past. Those crooked lines, the sharp teeth, the tangled wires, all now assumed a terrifyingly precise significance. Elias remembered a critical production line failure that had incurred millions in losses, attributed to a software error. At the time, Arthur had been the first to propose dismissing the IT team, citing incompetence as the cause. Elias, in his professional myopia, had agreed. Now, he perceived his brother's dissembling smile, the eagerness to assign blame, the expediency of deactivating the security system he himself had insisted upon installing. Luna's monster was not merely a drawing, it was a map, an X-ray of the treachery corroding his company from within. He began to observe Arthur closely, with an almost obsessive vigilance. During business luncheons at the Ethel Group Tower in downtown Houston, Elias noted how his brother deflected his gaze when the company's recent performance was discussed. He detected the faint edge of a smile Arthur attempted to mask when news of a new logistical issue was announced. Arthur's telephone conversations, once disregarded, were now scrutinized with heightened hearing, Elias endeavoring to decipher fragmented phrases, vocal inflections, the concealed urgency. On one occasion, Elias saw him hurriedly conceal a document in his briefcase upon perceiving his approach. Minor details, previously inconsequential, now amassed like pieces of a grim puzzle. The Thorne estate in River Oaks, once a domicile of luxury and solitude, evolved into Elias's operational hub. He spent sleepless nights in his office, reviewing archaic reports, cross-referencing data, seeking patterns. With each new discovery, anger intermingled with the anguish of disappointment. His own brother, to whom he had entrusted a portion of his empire, had betrayed him so depravedly. The investigation required more hands, but Elias could trust few. He summoned Ricardo Sanchez, the Ethel Group's head of security, a loyal man who had served the family for decades. Ricardo was more than an employee. He was akin to a confidant, a discreet pillar of integrity. "Ricardo, I require a favor, one that demands the utmost discretion," Elias commenced, his voice hushed and controlled as they met in an isolated cafe, away from the company's inquisitive eyes and ears. "I need you to investigate the Ethel Group's security system, specifically the software deactivation protocols. Verify the logs, the accesses, everything. Reveal this to no one. Absolutely no one." Ricardo, with his seasoned gaze and a face marked by time, merely assented, asking no questions, understanding the gravity of the request by Elias's unusual solemnity. The trust between them was an invisible yet indissoluble bond. Elias did not need to state the reason. Ricardo knew that something profoundly serious was transpiring. While the web of Elias's investigation wove itself in the shadows, Luna, within her Ramirez home in Gulfton, continued her artistic endeavor. Unaware of the monumental significance of her scribbles, she filled page after page with new iterations of the monster. Now the creature acquired horns resembling telephone antennas, a singular large eye that perceived all, and a tail intertwined with crumpled papers discarded in the bin. "Mommy, the monster said something strange on the phone. He said he was going to take down some things," Luna recounted to Sophia as she presented a new drawing, where the monster sported speech bubbles with aggressive scrawls. Sophia Ramirez, weary from her day's work, smiled tenderly at her daughter, envisioning childish fantasies. "Oh, my darling, the monster doesn't talk on the phone. That's merely a figment of your imagination, isn't it?" But Luna insisted, with the earnestness of a child who sees what adults overlook. "No, Mommy, I heard him. The man who resembles Elias was speaking softly, but I heard him. He was nervous." Sophia, though she did not comprehend the situation's full profundity, observed a subtle alteration in Elias's demeanor. He, once so distant and absorbed in his commercial world, now appeared more present, albeit in a peculiar fashion. There was a calculated tranquility in his gestures, a more discerning gaze she had never before witnessed. He observed her and Luna with an intensity that unsettled her. "Is anything amiss, Mr. Thorne?" Sophia inquired one day, while tidying his study, noting the piles of antiquated documents and the untouched coffee. Elias, who had been engrossed in a report, raised his eyes, an indefinable glint within his gaze. "No, Sophia, merely reordering certain matters. The company requires a thorough purification, much like your cleaning." The metaphor prompted a smile from Sophia, yet her apprehension persisted. She sensed that something was imminent, a latent tension pervading the air of the Thorne estate. Elias was evolving into a detective, utilizing Luna's pure and unpretentious intuition as his clandestine guide, an unlikely compass amidst the gloom of betrayal. Arthur, oblivious to the tightening snare, continued his schemes, confident in his impunity, unaware that a child's drawing would prove his undoing. Elias's investigation progressed with rapid, covert strides. Ricardo, with his extensive experience and discretion, swiftly uncovered irregularities in the security system's access logs. Deactivations had occurred at unconventional hours, and the traced IP addresses indicated an external server, meticulously cloaked, but which through digital forensic work led directly to a minor security consulting firm Arthur had suggested engaging months prior. The web was indeed closing. Elias amassed the evidence, Luna's drawings, which he secretly photographed and analyzed, perceiving in them the visual schema of the malicious code. Ricardo's reports, detailing the failures and unauthorized accesses, audio recordings of meetings where Arthur subtly undermined projects or siphoned resources, intercepted emails containing encrypted instructions for the consulting firm. All evidence pointed irrefutably to Arthur. The pain of betrayal was immense, but the imperative for justice was paramount. The moment of truth arrived. Elias convoked an extraordinary board meeting of the Ethel Group, with Arthur in attendance. The atmosphere in the room was oppressive, the tension nearly tangible. Elias, standing at the head of the lengthy mahogany table, evinced no emotion. He projected the documents onto the display screen one by one, each an incontrovertible proof of Arthur's sabotage. With every slide, Arthur's face paled, his confident smirk dissolving into a visage of shock and fury. "Arthur, you are not merely a saboteur. You are a thief, a traitor, and the most egregious offense. You leveraged my name, my trust, and my family to attempt to demolish everything we painstakingly built," Elias declared, his voice resonating with authority, yet also with profound sorrow. "This monster you fashioned, Arthur, it was sketched by a child who discerned what I, in my professional obfuscation, refused to see." Elias projected one of Luna's drawings, the most recent one, with its entangled wires and telephone horns. An absolute silence descended upon the room. Arthur, his face flushed with rage and humiliation, attempted to deny, to stammer convoluted excuses, but the evidence was overwhelming. The astonished board members voted unanimously for his immediate expulsion and for the initiation of judicial proceedings for fraud and sabotage. Arthur, in a final surge of malevolence, turned to Elias, his eyes blazing. "You will lament this, Elias. And what of that cleaner and her daughter? They enlightened you, did they not? Then let them know their lives are utterly destroyed. They are worthless. I expelled them, and you shall never restore them. They are refuse, Elias." Arthur's cruel words struck Elias with the force of a physical blow, yet they did not deter him. This was the precipice, the unequivocal confirmation that his decision was righteous. Arthur's inherent cruelty was the definitive proof of his depravity. Upon departing the meeting, Elias acted without delay. He drove directly to the Ramirez home in Gulfton, his heart heavy yet suffused with renewed determination. He needed to redress the harm Arthur had wrought, not merely upon his corporation, but upon the lives of those two guileless women. When Elias knocked upon the unpretentious door, Sophia opened it, her expression startled to behold the magnate there. Luna, inquisitive, peeked from behind her mother. "Sophia, Luna, I have come to solicit your forgiveness," Elias began, his voice thick with emotion, an utterance Sophia never conceived she would hear. "I was blind. I did not heed. I permitted a terrible injustice to befall you due to my own failure to perceive the truth. Arthur has been unmasked, and he will atone for his transgressions. But that does not efface what he inflicted upon you. I desire your return. I wish for you to come back to the Thorn estate, to your lives, and I wish for you to comprehend that you are not trash, as he asserted. You are indispensable." Elias's words, articulated with an overflowing sincerity, moved Sophia profoundly. She perceived in his gaze not solely remorse, but a vulnerability, a humanity she had never imagined existed beneath the powerful entrepreneur's veneer. Luna, not entirely comprehending, ran to Elias and embraced him, exhibiting a new drawing, a small monster, but now encircled by blossoms. Elias knelt, embracing Luna and gazing at Sophia, a gentle smile supplanting his former aloofness. "Luna, your monster is now encompassed by good things, is he not? Sophia, please grant me an opportunity to amend this, not only the injustice, but to reconstruct something nascent. I have recognized that existence is not exclusively about commerce. It is about people, about truth, about the innocence of a child who instructed me to truly see. Sophia, tears in her eyes, yet a smile beginning to bloom, simply assented. She discerned there not merely the magnate, but a man shattered and reassembled, a man who had at last discovered his core. This was the genesis of a new chapter, not only for them, but for Elias, who had allowed himself to feel, to cherish, and to contend for what was honorable. The schism caused by Arthur had, paradoxically, united them in a manner that luxury and power could never achieve. Elias Thorne, the magnate who had disregarded the world, had been salvaged by a monster's drawing and by the fortitude of a woman and her daughter. He had confronted his personal demon, not merely to reinstate Sophia and Luna to the Thorne estate, but to integrate them into his own life, which now promised to be replete not solely with corporate endeavors, but with the warm and unanticipated light of an affection that had emerged from obscurity. Justice had been enacted, and with it, the prospect of a nascent family, a renewed hope, and the profound assurance that innocence at times constitutes the greatest of truths.